Just gone 3 o'clock. Welcome along to today's presentation. It's occupational noise, hand-arm vibration, and whole body vibration. Okay, moving on then. Brief introduction. My name is Diarmuid Keeney. My company is Intl Acoustics. We're located at www.acoustics.ie. I hold an MSc in Applied Acoustics from the University of Derby, a diploma in acoustics and noise control as well, and a BEng from NUI. Okay, some of our clients then throughout Ireland. Brief introduction. I have them listed there below. So moving on, the learning objectives from today, I suppose, in terms of what we would hope to get out of today. Just before we start into that though, if you move your mouse to the top of your screen, for example, up where I'm showing you there with the arrow, you should be able to bring down a menu there where there's a chat window. And at any stage, if you want to ask a question, if you open up the chat window on your PC, you can ask me a question. So please feel free at any stage. I'll keep an eye on the chat window here, so if anything comes in, hopefully I can answer it for you. Okay, so the learning objectives today. Today I'd hope to provide you with an insight into occupational noise, hand-arm vibration, and of course whole body vibration as well. Also, I'd like to introduce you to the relevant threshold values for both noise, hand-arm vibration, and whole body vibration. Okay, and also I'll explain to you how we carry out a hand-arm vibration measurement in the field. Okay, so occupational noise and vibration. Well, this was originally set out in the Health and Safety and Welfare at Work Act, Control of Noise at Work Regulations 2006. Then following that, there was a modification to that and a further guidance document, which you're probably all familiar with, or maybe not. But basically, this is a guide to health and welfare and work. Again, a general application. And that's a statutory instrument number there, which replaced the above. Then the parts we're interested in today, and in today's presentation, Part 5, Chapter 1 deals with the control of noise at work, and Part 5, Chapter 2 then deals with control of vibration at work. Now, while today's presentation does include noise and vibration, it's primarily about hand-arm vibration and whole body vibration, but I want to touch on noise also, just to give you an introduction to it and explain how it is similar, in that it's based very much on an occupational dose or exposure, for example, to noise or indeed vibration. Okay, so the health effects of noise. Some of the health effects are the known health effects, for example, deafness, permanent loss of hearing arising from continuous exposure to noise. And again, this is a gradual process. Normally, when we assess it, you would assess it using, I'll just show you with the mouse there, there's an LAX, an 8-hour, it's an 8-hour exposure time. It's based on an exposure over a full 8-hour daytime period. And again, there's also an LEX weekly, which is a weekly exposure. So those two parameters are very important in terms of the assessment of the exposure of a particular employee over a week-long period. Okay, then obviously there's conditions such as blast deafness, permanent loss of hearing arising out of a sudden exposure to high noise level, and it may produce greater damage and hearing loss than the continued exposure. So again, that's just very much based on a peak or a one-off event, for example. Then just a quick note, impulsive noise in excess of 150 dB would probably produce instantaneous damage to the hearing, whereas noise in excess of 130 dB would be at the threshold of pain. So that's just a quick introduction to the health effects of noise. Again, if you look at the general applications 2007, just to briefly touch on these, you'll see a parameter written like that, an LEX 8-hour, which is an 8-hour exposure limit value. So it says over that 8-hour period, an employee should not be exposed to a level in excess of 87 dBA. And it also touches on a peak level, that a limiting value that an employee should not be exposed to either. So this takes care of short duration events. For example, a loud bang would be picked up very much using this metric, for example, whereas when averaged out over an 8-hour day, it may not be as effective. So what there is within that general applications is there's an exposure limit value, there's also an upper exposure action value and a lower exposure action value. So the employer would have certain requirements in cases where the 8-hour exposure is in excess of 85, an employer has certain obligations. Again, if the lower action value is exceeded 80 dBA, you notice it's lower, he has certain obligations, and this is the level that should not be exceeded over a daytime period. So they're all set out within the general applications 2007 guidance as such. So they're just 3 important levels. So again, just to summarize, there's an exposure limit, there's an upper exposure action value, and there's a lower exposure action value. So depending on the noise level or the likely noise exposure of a particular employee, you would treat these differently. Okay, so moving on then, the health and safety executives in the UK have produced some very good documentation and daily noise exposure calculators. So if you know the noise level that somebody is subjected to, you can essentially enter it into this Excel sheet, which you can download from there, and based on the exposure time workout, the likely daily noise exposure for that employee. You can do the same then. There's a weekly noise exposure calculator. Again, you can work out how much or what the noise dose is likely to be for an employee using that and so on. And there's also an element in there which allows you to assess hearing protectors and to see if you're providing adequate hearing protection for your employees. So basically, there is in the UK there's quite a lot of good guidance documents and of course Excel documents that you can use to calculate these levels. So again, we would normally measure them, and then you would, once you have them measured, then you would figure out what the daily noise exposure or weekly noise exposure is. So that's essentially the introduction on occupational noise. And again, you can use spot measurement techniques. That's where somebody comes along with a sound level meter. You conduct a noise measurement close to the ear. I would suggest even in that picture that he may not even be close enough. But you're interested in the level at the ear. Again, you check the right ear and the left ear. So depending on the process, you can have different levels on either side of those ears. And then there's another method then you can use, which are dose meters. Again, I wouldn't be hugely in favor of these in that they are subject to situations where you're measuring noise in a sort of an uncontrolled fashion. So you don't know exactly what is happening, or you can clip something like this onto an employee, but again, you don't know if it. I mean, there's some cases where they can. I've heard stories where they can get left in locker rooms, for example. So it's pretty much an unattended measurement, which presents risks. So at least conducting an attended measurement, then it leaves you in a position where you can make comment about the noise and the processes that are happening and all that. So these have limited use. They are useful for dangerous environments and situations like that. But essentially a spot measurement is an accurate way of doing it, and you're able to make comment about the processes that are taking place at the time, which is important as well. Okay, so moving on. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to text them through there. I have a chat window. If you open up your chat window, you can send a question if you like. So I'll move on. Vibration then. Well, vibration affects individuals in 2 ways mainly. You can have vibration generated in the hands and arms by powered hand tools, which is referred to as hand-arm vibration. Then you can have vibration passing through the body, which is generated in site vehicles, agricultural vehicles. It could be ride-on lawnmowers. It can be any sort of equipment where it could be, for example, if you think of even bin collections, you may have some of the employees standing on the back of a bin lorry, for example, and you can induce vibration into the body that way. So basically, the main differences are, one, I suppose, hand-arm vibration. Again, anyone using hand-powered tools, hand tools essentially, or you can have whole-body vibration. Somebody who's riding a machine, for example, you can have, for construction work on roads, you can have vibratory rollers, if you like. So anyone that's subjected to whole body vibration, that's the main difference between the two. And I'll give you a couple of examples of those. But like noise, the general applications guidelines, if you like, 2007, they set out exposure limits. It's very much like noise. They state that for hand-arm vibration, the daily exposure limit value standardized will say to an 8-hour reference period. So again, it's very much like noise. It's based on an 8-hour reference period, but it says that the limit value, it shall not exceed 5 meters per second per second. Now that's a measurement of vibration acceleration. So it's essentially, again, you need to work out the daily exposure limit. So essentially, if you've got somebody using a grinder, for example, or for example, let's take a chainsaw, for example, one would need to measure the vibration from the chainsaw, and then you need to figure out how often is that employee using that chainsaw, for what period of time during the day, and you would need to work out the daily exposure limit. And again, like noise, there are also action values, and again, an employer would have certain obligations when, for example, over the 8-hour reference period, that the vibration levels meet or exceed 2.5 meters per second. So again, it's very much like noise. It's based on a dose, a daily dose, if you like. So again, you would consider both of these values. So you do your assessment, for example, and you figure out, well, look, has it exceeded the action value? If it has, well, then you have certain obligations, and again, then you must make sure that it doesn't exceed the exposure limit value. So that's just an important point. For whole body vibration, again, it's same principle as that of noise. It's based very much on a daily exposure limit, and what they say for whole body vibration is that it's standardized to an 8-hour reference period again, and again they set out a limit within that that it should not exceed, and then they have a lower vibration value for an action value. So basically, if the daily exposure limit exceeds 0.5 meters per second, you have certain requirements as an employer, and then obviously that's a limit value that you must make sure that it doesn't exceed. Okay, so that's all of those. I just see there, how often should noise in the workplace be checked? Many companies do an annual noise survey, but in theory, if you change or introduce a new process or modify the systems of work, I would nearly suggest that it would be no harm to monitor that change, if you like. But we would do annual occupational noise assessments for industry. But again, as I say, if it changes, or if the layout changes, or a new machine is added, or it's modified in some way, I would suggest something more frequent. Okay, so if that answers that question. Typical vibration magnitudes, then, just to give you an idea for hand-arm vibration, the acceleration, we're measuring acceleration, which is in meters per second, and these are just some typical examples. A chainsaw, on the handle of a chainsaw, you're looking at about 6 meters per second, and that's a vibration value. Again, sanders, you can have levels can be higher. A hammer drill might be 9 meters per second, a road breaker, and so on. So they're just some examples of the types of vibration levels one could expect from some hand-arm vibration equipment, if you like, or tools that would induce hand-arm vibration. Then for whole body vibration, this is just an example. You know, if you're sitting in a car, we'll say the body is exposed to 0.4 meters per second. Again, approximately. It very much depends on the road surface, the size of the vehicle, and so on. So these are only just sort of guideline values. Again, a lorry, you may have 11.7. Tractors maybe higher, quarry and dubber. And it is important then to keep in mind that these are all based very much on the surface, and the same would apply for the tools. It depends what you're cutting. You know, again, like for example, a chainsaw cutting hardwood versus softwood and so on. So there can be variation. So it is important to assess the tools and the equipment in the environment in which they're being used. So it isn't to say that your levels in terms of exposure from the tractor could in fact be higher or indeed lower. So that's where it would be important to assess both the machine and the equipment in its place of work. Okay. So moving on then, some examples of tools that generate hand-arm vibration. For example, something like this, an angle grinder where you've got two handles. You have an operator, and basically you have a hand-arm vibration element to be considered here and here. So the guidance values, or the guidance would suggest that you would measure on both handles and look at the worst case scenario. So in a tool like that, where there's two hands involved, you would need to attach your vibration accelerometer onto that handle, conduct a measurement, and the same would apply for here. So you're assessing both. Again, this is another obviously a hammer action drill or chipping hammer. Again, you would measure you would conduct a measurement on the handle. There's an actual accelerometer on that handle there where you conduct your vibration measurement. So you're interested in measuring where the man-machine interface exists. So for hand-arm vibration, they're the points that you usually consider in most cases. Again, this is another example of a hand-arm vibration measurement being conducted. Again, you're concerned where the hands meet the tool, if you like, and that's where you conduct your measurements from. Okay. One question in there from Paul: does all equipment have to be rated, indicating vibration levels? Vibration rating? Yes. Well, there are a lot of the modern tools. They're trying to introduce a sort of a traffic light system where you have a red, amber, and green, where you can essentially, looking at a tool, you can figure out if the risk is high or low. Now the difficulty is it depends very much on the application of the tool as to what it is you're cutting. For example, it can have huge influences on the vibration level. So while it is a good and useful method of determining a high level or equipment that generates high levels or low levels, it is important though to also consider and look at its application. Or you also need to make inquiries as to how that vibration level was determined. Like very often we were involved in one project where they were using orbital sanders, and when you start looking at the way the machine manufacturer conducts their assessment, they do it in a no-loaded condition. So you're looking at orbital sanders, the vibration levels that they generate when they're not applied to a surface. So therefore, when you apply an orbital sander to a surface, the amount of vibration induced is far higher. So one needs to be careful, I suppose, as to basically to understand. Well, it's important to understand exactly how those levels were derived. Okay, so I hope that answers the question, and if not, send me through a text and I'll see if I can answer it for you. Again, more tools that generate hand-arm vibration. Again, your chainsaw, you've got two handles to consider. This is another piece of construction equipment, a whacker, I think they call it. Again, you have an operator would have their two hands on here. Could be for long periods of time. It might be for 6 hours a day, for example. And here there's a vibration accelerometer attached to the handle, and it runs down to a machine like that, and we can track or measure the amount of hand-arm vibration induced into an operator using that machine. Okay, so another few examples then. Again, you've common sources, chainsaw, we've covered that. That's an example of an orbital sander. But again, if you do look at the manufacturer specifications, you need to know exactly how it was that the vibration levels were determined, if there was a standard used and so on. Nailing guns can be another source. You can have these brush cutters where you have operators using a brush cutting device, two handles on the machine for long periods of time. And again, just an important thing for hand tools, you're looking at 2 handles. In a situation like this, though, where you've got an orbital sander, you may end up just conducting a hand-arm vibration assessment on one hand. And most of those orbital sanders would be that will be used in a one-handed operation. Okay, so moving on then. So the measurement of it, as I said to you, we would attach a device like that where you have an accelerometer that's attached, and it's measuring the vibration levels in 3 axes. And I'll just apologies, I'll just go back one there. So for example, this is a vibration unit for packing concrete, if you like. So again, you can have operators holding something like that for long periods of time. You'd need to assess, obviously, the 2 locations as well, where an operator would typically hold a device like that as well. Okay, so just to explain some of the health effects of hand-arm vibration, workers affected by hand-arm vibration commonly report attacks of whitening, blanching of 1 or more fingers when exposed to the cold. You can get a tingling or loss of sensation in your fingers. A loss of light touch can be lost. You can get pain and cold sensations between periodic white finger attacks. In some cases you have losses of grip strength, and bone cysts in fingers and wrists are another effect one can see. So again, most what we would do, we would assess the vibration level of a tool, for example, or indeed a machine, and assess them relative to that. But these are just some of the typical reported health effects that one can you would certainly hear about in terms of and there should be sort of trigger points as well, and maybe, you know, they could it would be useful, I suppose, to determine if the risk was high. If you were getting a report of any of these things, I would suggest that you would conduct a hand-arm vibration assessment. Again, symptoms of vibration, white finger. Again, it's that's essentially what it looks like. I don't know if you can see that okay, but and that's probably a worse photograph again, but sorry, a better photograph just to show you the effect. That's some of the symptoms. Okay, so again, the vibration calculator, again, it's very much dose based. The Health and Safety Executive in the UK thankfully have also provided a very useful hand-arm vibration calculator. Again, it's where one would conduct a vibration measurement, and you can work out based on the exposure time. Now I think I have that as an Excel sheet, and I'll just, if you bear with me for 1 second, I'll just share this with you now. This is an example of that HSE calculator, if you like. So essentially, if you look at this field here, suppose I was to measure a vibration magnitude of 2.5 for example, for an operator using one tool, for example, and suppose the operator uses that machine for half an hour, and let's say half an hour and 10 minutes every day. You can work out the daily exposure limit, the 8-hour exposure level, if you like. Now suppose the operator then, in the second half of the morning or something, an operator goes along and uses a second tool that generates 3 meters per second, and you can, for a period of 1 hour, for example, you can see that it works out the daily value. I just see, can pre-existing medical conditions exacerbate the effects of hand-arm vibration? I'm not sure. That would be a question for a medical person, I would think, but I can't answer that question, I'm afraid. But more of what we, I suppose, focus on is the measurement and assessment of hand-arm vibration with respect to the guidance values as such. So I don't know the simple answer, Vicky, if that's okay. So again, using those hand-arm vibration exposure calculators, you can work out what an employee is likely to be exposed to over an 8-hour period. And there's some useful information in here. It'll tell you the time that for each process, how long it will take to reach the exposure action value. So, for example, for this tool process here, I'll just highlight that. For that process there, with an acceleration of 3 meters per second, it'll take 5 hours to meet the exposure action value, and it'll take 22 hours of using that machine to reach the 5 meters per second limit value. So they're useful in terms of determining whether a tool is appropriate or not for the application, but you can essentially work out your daily exposure limit. So it's very much the same as as noise, in that you're always looking at the dose or the exposure that, and I see that's updated, that's the 3rd of June. There is a more recent one on that website as well. So that's just the hand-arm vibration exposure calculator. It's very similar to the one for noise, and there's also one on there as well for whole body vibration. So I'll just go back to that presentation again. Okay, so I'll move on, and if anyone has any further questions, please feel free to send them through the text. Again, then, the measurement of hand-arm vibrations is relevant standards, ISO standards, ISO 5349. Again, you're looking at 3 different axes. You're measuring vertically. This is the x-axis, and again horizontally in the y, and then front and back in the z. So when you're conducting a measurement, we would normally attach an accelerometer that measures in the 3 axes, and as to how it's mounted on the machine. We'd set up the axis as such, and again there's weightings. I won't go into them today, but the equipment applies a weighting to the measurement. It's really as a way of setting the machine up so that it measures. There's a correlation between how the hand is affected by vibrations in certain directions, if you like. So there's a weighting applied to it. And again, other points in that, you measure on all handles. That's what essentially about the 2 handles. It's very important that both handles are assessed. Again, you need to measure on all 3 orthogonal axes. That's what's in the X, Y, and the Z axis. And again, in terms of working out the exposure, the vibration exposure levels, you need to, all 3 vibration levels are considered, if you like, and you're working out a weighted or an S value. So basically, that's just saying that the instrument considers all three. Sorry, I'll just mute a couple of microphones there for a sec. The instrument measures on all 3 axes and works out a value for you. Okay, so control measures then for hand-arm vibration. Obviously, the first thing you do is you conduct a risk assessment to evaluate the potential exposure of employees to hand-arm vibration. Can alternative methods be used? I don't know why that's in there, but excuse me for that. Again, yes, carry out pre-employment health assessments. That would be that's not unlike Vicky's or somebody's question earlier on. They would recommend that you would carry out pre-employment health assessments to see if anyone's suffering from it before coming into the workplace. One thing you can do is introduce job rotation to minimize the exposure to vibration. So in situations where somebody was, for example, brush cutting all day, you could alternate their type of work throughout the day to minimize exposure to vibration or hand-arm vibration. Again, consult with the manufacturers, suppliers, hire companies to source low vibration tools. There is a drive at the moment in terms of manufacturers. They are trying to produce equipment with good vibration isolation in the handles. So this would kind of go back to purchasing. If somebody was buying in a particular tool, it would be important to look at a low vibration tool. But again, you can't ignore the fact that it's very important that you know the likely vibration when that tool is in the workplace, and not just the manufacturer's quota vibration level, which could, may not consider that or its application. Okay, so then just for that, treat manufacturers and hire companies' vibration ratings with caution. That again you need to know how they're being measured or assessed. So that's an important fact. So some control measures again. There are tool databases as well. You can get, if anyone wants information on that, I can send you a link to one such website where they publish typical vibration levels for machines used in certain scenarios. So they could be useful. And again, say it's good to brief, I suppose, all employees on the risks of hand-arm vibration. Initiate weekly skin checks. If there's a significant risk to health and it exists, introduce periodic health surveillance. And they're just all tips. We'll say any of the hand-arm vibration guidance documents would suggest that you would approach some of these. This is one that's another important one. Obviously, it's very important to keep hands warm. So very often for hand-arm vibration, employees would wear gloves that would keep the hands warm to maintain circulation. They're not there to provide any sort of vibration decoupling or anything like that. But and I believe also smoking can have an effect on how somebody's likely to be affected by hand-arm vibration. So then, in terms of if something, for example, was to go to a court of law, they use this Stockholm scale, which is a way of measuring the severity of hand-arm vibration or vibration white finger. So if you've got that condition, you basically, using the Stockholm scale, you can work out the severity of it, and many compensation claims are decided upon based on the severity of the hand-arm vibration. So that's or the vibration white finger. So that's just something useful to know about anyway. And again, okay, so I'll move on then, and if anyone has any questions, please let me know. Moving on to whole body vibration then. I mean, this is the type of equipment that one needs to consider when it comes to whole body vibration. This is a Bomag roller. It may have some vibratory elements in terms of rolls and vibrates. Again, you can have an operator sitting on that machine. Whole body is subjected to vibration over long periods of time. People working in the forestry industry, for example, are using any sort of plant or construction equipment, could be exposed to whole body vibration. Lawnmowers, buses, Dublin bus. Again, you can have seats in these buses. You're travelling over, the drivers are on rigid seats, travelling over rough road surfaces and so on for long periods of time. Again, they can be exposed to whole body vibration and so on. And then you can have forklifts and so on. So there's a number of, and basically whole body vibration deals with this type of equipment where the operator is actually on the machine, if you like. Some of the health effects then from chronic vibration, you can get lower back pain, neck or shoulder disorders, digestive or circulatory disorders, insomnia, headaches, shakiness shortly after or during exposure. There's some of the effects. Then when we conduct a whole body vibration assessment then on, for example, this is one in a bus where you may have a seat, a driver on a seat, and the seat is rigidly attached to the bus. There's an accelerometer inside that pad. The driver sits on that pad, and we would conduct a vibration assessment, measuring the vibration that his body or her body is subjected to over a day-long period. We could even take a sample of an hour or two on a typical road and work out what the daily exposure level is based on the time that the driver is exposed to that. That's just a whole body vibration measurement. This is one of our whole body vibration measurement devices. So again, we're looking at the contribution of the x-axis and the y-axis and the z-axis. Just go back again, they're the three axes we're concerned with. So we're measuring the vibration levels in each of those axes and essentially measuring an acceleration, if you like, for that assessment. So that's just an introduction to some of the equipment we would use to measure whole body vibration. Again, the Health and Safety Executive have kindly produced some document there as well, and there is also a calculator in there as well that you can use. I have two very good documents, one on hand-arm vibration and one on whole body vibration, and if anyone wants to contact me after the presentation, I gladly email them on to you. But again, there is calculators there to work out when you know what the vibration level is in a seat. You can figure out what an operator's likely exposure is to be throughout a day. So that's a picture of a bus, for example, where you have a rigid seat mount, and obviously you can get vibration, and the bus is induced up into the seat and so on. So that's just I just said I'd throw that in there. So our own Health and Safety Authority, they have all of those levels set out in that documentation there. There isn't a calculator or anything like that available, but there is guidance there to the Health and Safety Authority have just stipulated the levels, the action values, as well as the limiting values, and that's all within those General Application Regulations 2007. Okay, so probably would be an opportunity with the HSA to introduce some sort of a calculator on their website. Again, that's an extract from the HSA's website. They talk about vibration and legislation and the levels and so on, but there's no calculators in there or anything like that. But in the meantime, one could use the UK or Excel sheets, I guess. Okay, so the other thing I've noticed in the UK, there are lots of companies specialising in hand-arm vibration claims, where these guys would be specialists in hand-arm vibration. So if you have a claim or potentially have a claim, these guys would this type of company would take it on, and it's probably going to happen more and more here in Ireland as well, I would think. Just have a note in there. From your experience, are there many industries actively measuring for hand-arm vibration in Ireland? A few, not many actually, not many, and there's probably be no harm for more to do it, to be honest. But there are a few specific industries where the risks are high, and I suppose that have come from either complaints from employees complaining of tingling effects and that type of thing. Some of those companies would conduct assessments on that, but generally it's not widely carried out throughout the country. Do you need specific qualification to conduct a noise and vibration assessment under the regs? Well, the regulations they don't specify that exactly, but it would be no harm, I suppose, if a case went to court at any stage. It might be no harm to be able to demonstrate to the courts that you're suitably qualified to measure hand-arm vibration and assess it. So, not that I'm aware of that you specifically have to have qualifications in the measurement of it, but I think it would be advisable if a claim ever did arise. Generally, that would be the first question that somebody in a witness box would be asked. Well, were they suitably qualified to conduct the hand-arm vibration or whole body vibration measurement? Okay, so again, as I said, there's legal firms specialising in hand-arm vibration claims, whole body vibration claims. A number of solicitors have gone into this in the UK. I'll tell you all about the whole body vibration syndrome and so on. So again, there are specialists in the UK that will look after sort of hand-arm vibration and whole body vibration claims. So as I said to you, I suppose the next steps, we have two very good guidance documents from the UK on hand-arm vibration and the other on whole body vibration. And if anybody would like a copy of those, feel free to email me at diarmuid@acoustics.ie, and I will send them on to you. And if you have any projects that you wish to discuss or anything, feel free to call me. I'll leave my mobile number there, 813-7058, or you can feel free to call us at the office. So that really concludes most of the presentation. Just before I finish up though, just to give you a quick a bit of information there on some successful hand-arm vibration claims in the UK. There was 143,000 OIA was awarded to one British gas fitter. I've listed a couple of cases that were successful within the UK. Again, these are hand-arm vibration claims. Just see Northwest Water. Now this is publicly available information on successful hand-arm vibration cases in the UK, and I'll just I'll list those there for you rather than going through them. So that's a number of successful hand-arm vibration cases in the UK, and then in the States, this is one Texas jury awards 1.9 million to a train driver for whole body vibration spinal injuries. Again, I believe this is a train driver standing for long periods of time subjected to whole body vibration on a freight train. So there's a number of companies, we'll say, around the country that would have similar situations where you have employees standing for long periods of time on vibrating machines, if you like. So again, that's one whole body vibration claim in the US. So thank you for your time, and again, if you need to contact me at any stage, please feel free, and if you have any questions, I'll hope I can answer them for you anyway. It's just we're just about 41 minutes into the presentation, so if you have any questions, please feel free, and if not, thank you for your time.